Affect Autism, 10 years of providing free supportive content for your DIR journey.
All of Affect Autism's podcasts are produced and edited by Daria Brown. Please note that the views expressed during all episodes are solely those of the individuals involved, do not constitute educational or medical advice, and do not necessarily reflect the views of Affect Autism, Daria Brown, nor ICDL and associated parties. Listeners should consult with professionals familiar with their individual circumstances for specific support.
You're listening to the We Chose Play podcast from Affect Autism, where affect is the #1 tool we use in supporting development through playful interactions. Welcome back, Floor Timers. I am thrilled to have Clare Kumar, who is a late diagnosed ADHD mother of 2 young adults in Toronto. After 20 years as a productivity and organization coach, today Clare spends her time and energy thinking more collectively about performance. She believes everyone deserves to be able to offer their best. Far too often, neurodivergent people burn out or opt out when, in fact, we have been designed out. So Clare encourages organizations to create neurologically safe spaces, cultures, and experiences where their guests can move forward with ease or keep calm and carry on. She offers engaging interactive keynotes and advisory services, and she's the host and creator of the Happy Space podcast, where inclusion meets design. Welcome, Clare.
So great to be with you, Daria.
And I will tell the audience how we met. We were both guests on the Autistic Culture podcast. So I listened to the episode with Clare, and she mentioned Chatham, Ontario. And I'm like, I'm from Windsor, Ontario, about 40 minutes from there. And so I emailed her and we started chatting, and we realized that she's in Toronto about, 40 minutes from me.
Apparently we like to stay 40 minutes from each other.
I'm so glad you could come on. And I've been listening to your Happy Space podcast. There's a few years worth of episodes, so I've only made my way through a few so far. But I will say that Clare sounds so professional. And you have like the most amazing radio voice, excellent content about things that should be commonplace, but just aren't. So why don't we start wherever you want to start, how you got into this work, what you do, etc.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind words, too. I think as someone puts a podcast out around thinking about the soundscape and our environments, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't try and pay attention to that. So just before we started, I said, just a minute, I have to put a blanket down on my desk. And I don't know if you can hear the difference, but it warmed up the sound just a little bit. I've heard, when we're getting to podcast editing, I've listened to a podcast where I forgot to put the blanket down. And what a difference. So anyway, it's little details. The cushions in the back, for example, 2 other ways to absorb sound that's echoing in a very echoey room. So how did I get into this? My degree was biology. So as a student, I loved school. I loved learning, and I still to this day love learning and have numbers of books on the go at any given time. But it was science and biology that called me into my undergraduate work. But I quickly realized that I didn't like the smell of formaldehyde, and I didn't want to work in a lab. It wasn't people-y enough for me. And I wasn't going to med school. I pretty much figured that out quickly after I got to university, and my grades did one of these, as I think the richness of my life in other ways expanded. And so I studied biology, and then I did a business program, and I thought, wow, this is common sense. And it's marketing, which I've specialized in for a number of years, a lovely mix of analytical and creative thinking. So the structure of autism, the freewheelingness of ADHD, perfectly at home in a marketing role. And then I worked corporately for 15 years looking at telecommunications and loyalty marketing in all kinds of different areas. I've always moved. So finance, sales, marketing, internal communications. So definitely looking at all the different kinds of areas. And I would say I'm not a master in anything there, but I understand a lot about a lot of different things and a lot of different environments. I had 10 different schools growing up, for example. So all of that led me to the corporate world, which ultimately I feel like I was designed out of. because of a lack of flexibility around the working environment. And I think there's a construct of work which includes the work environment and everything to get to that work environment, which is the commute, which is the fact that we were supposed to dress in stilettos and pantyhose. And, there was a whole lot around it that I found exhausting. And I start my podcast off with the tale of the fact that I learned the hard way that Birkenstocks and pantyhose don't mix. So if anybody knows Birkenstocks, that's that cork soled cork footbed that is very cushioning, rubber soles, but like a slipper, open-toed slipper, and pantyhose. Does anybody even remember pantyhose? Like, do you wear them anymore, Daria?
I do, but not on a daily basis by any
Yeah.
means.
So if you've ever mixed them with Birkenstocks, you'll know that cork footbed gets slippery and the
So I'm
pantyhose
guessing
slip.
that you were getting ready for work and you had your stockings on
Exactly.
and you were just wearing the Birkenstocks around the house
Exactly.
before you put on your heels to go out the door, and that's when the
Yeah,
slip happened. Okay.
exactly. So that was the beginning of having to fully recognize that the construct of work, not the work itself, but the construct of work was too demanding for my nervous system. And so fast forward then into self-discovery and well, actually I'd identified that I wanted to step into my own using my authentic skills to be in service of others. That's what I think success really comes from. I feel like you get valued and you get to feel good and you get to have impact. And there's a reciprocity in giving and receiving because when you're able to give of yourself, then you receive. And that's why I do the work that I do now. So I spent almost 20 years now in organization and productivity. So working with people in their homes, anywhere from the garage to the kitchen to the office to the bedroom, everywhere around the house. And with people in their offices, looking at how we manage time. And so, really interesting as later on I learn about high sensitivity and think, huh, maybe it's my sensitivity to visual stimulation that drove my need to organize my world and calm it down, right? But wait a minute, I like to do all these different things. So my relationship with high sensitivity got me into talking about neurodivergence and sort of saying, why do I not see HSP on any of the charts or slides put out by any of the leading thinkers? It wasn't until Janara Narenberg's book, Divergent Mind, that I was like, she gets it. Sensitive people are definitely part of a neuroatypical way of being. And so I started my podcast April 2022, all focusing around highly sensitive people and understanding that temperament, not considered a disorder, not in the DSM-5, for better or for worse. And it wasn't until I interviewed a woman named Melanie Diesel, who's also late diagnosed, and she with autism, and she helped me understand more about autism. And in that podcast episode, I was like, say what? Say what? Every few minutes. And it was my first deeper look at actually what it means to be autistic. And in that moment, I was like, oh my goodness, that is talking about me. I proceeded very quickly to obtain a diagnosis. And I will say it was because I was I'm in the space of talking about design and inclusion. It's the only reason that I felt compelled to get a diagnosis. And I think that conversation is very clearly on the table now. Is it necessary to have a diagnosis? I actually have a line of t-shirts I call inclusivity. And one of them says diagnosis is privilege. Whether it's a lack of awareness to put the label on it, our needs can be identified. And I really am much more a fan of the social model of disability than the medical model. And it brings my journey now to refocusing the podcast on this concept of this belief that we're squandering talent unintentionally through inhospitable containers, space, culture, and experience, and a real drive to invite the world to create safer places for us so that more of this giving and receiving can happen. So that's where I am now. That brings me to being delighted to talk to you, although I would have been delighted to talk to you many years ago in Chatham and Windsor for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting because there are a lot of people who really don't like labels. So
Mhm.
I've spoken with some adults who are probably autistic, but they have no desire to be
Mhm.
labeled.
Yeah.
And they say, I'm a unique person. So I love that you brought up that point. And I
Mhm.
love that your corollary to that, or whatever you'll call it, was to
Yeah.
say it's about understanding our needs.
Mhm.
And as you know, this website's about the DIR model, and the I is all about the individual profile. And despite all of the talk of diagnosis, it really is about each person's individual unique profile and what their needs are. And I think there's so much of an overlap from the HSP, the highly sensitive person, and those on the autism spectrum and probably ADHD as well. And then, as you said, your ADHD. I was diagnosed as autistic, but I'm starting to think that I'm more ADHD for sure, identify
Mm.
with a lot of those characteristics too. So yeah, for me, it again, same as you about my work. I thought it would be important to have a diagnosis because of the work that I do. But
Mhm.
for me, it is more a process of like, when do I thrive and
Yes.
when do I cave? And
Yeah.
understanding those needs, because I've just been moving through life like a robot, not ever reflecting on that and not
Mhm.
even noticing when am I more productive and when am I not and why.
Yeah. Yeah.
And certainly COVID brought that to light for so many people, especially in autistic people in workplaces, and wanting to negotiate working from home, which I know you've talked about on your podcast too. And of course that's when I heard all the podcasts that I did what you did, which was like, what, that's me, what, that's me too, what, that's me too.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, a lot of parallels between our stories. But the work that you do is so important because, you've been featured in all kinds of, TV clips and news segments and magazines and this and that. Like you've really had a wide range in with your experience. And tell us about the work that you do with airports and the sunflower program and all of that, because this is
Yeah.
like really important stuff. And I just feel so grateful to have met you because this is something that is really the podcast you did with the professor from Université Laval in Quebec City who's working with the government about this. So this is important stuff, and I'm hoping that it will move forward.
Thank you. Let me just pull on a prop if I may. Just just so that people that are watching can recognize the sunflower. So this is a symbol of the Hidden Disability Sunflower Program. It's a yellow sunflower on a bright green background for anybody who's just listening to the podcast. The sunflower program actually started in Gatwick Airport in 2016. There you go. It's yeah, I got mine too. This is what you might see just if you're out and about and you see a sunflower, you'll see somebody wearing a lanyard or a pin or a button to indicate voluntarily, if they wish, in a situation where they think it might help them, the fact that they have a non-visible challenge, disability, or condition. And it was Gatwick Airport that recognized, gosh, we know people are coming into our airport and they have needs, but we can't tell what they are. So we really are looking for a way to do that. And the company started just fulfilling that need by creating the sunflower symbol and and using offering that as a tool to be able to make the non-visible visible. It's now grown to over 330 airports. It's in almost 60 countries formally, 90 plus informally. I actually grow the program in Canada, which I'm really privileged to do because it's a tool. Some people will also say, and I'll say this right off the top, some people say, oh, I don't want to wear anything. And what I love about the tool is that it's completely voluntary. And it's kind of subtle too. If people don't know it, they're just like, oh, beautiful lanyard. Where'd you get that? And then it can prompt a conversation. But what it does is we have in the program, we have companies that join as members. And this is how we're really spreading compassion in the world, and they create awareness about the sunflower with their employees. Those employees then know how to respond when they see the sunflower symbol and meet that person with more time, more patience, more compassion. So that's basically it. We don't say it gets you anything specific. It's up for every organization to figure what that means, whether it's, in an airport lineup and there's a line for people needing assistance. Well, if you need assistance, then you should be entitled to that lineup. And you might often see a sunflower symbol and know you can go there. And you'll know that the staff, there's a good shot that everybody there has been trained, is aware of the sunflower and can meet you. And I've now been with the program formally for over a year and been wearing the sunflower when I travel. Because I will say that as an autistic person who's very sensory sensitive, it is my environment that can render me disabled. And it has in numerous different ways, sound and light being the primary. Motion is another one that can render me completely incapacitated at times. And I think it's really been powerful for me to see the flash of recognition on an employee's face, and I know instantly that I'm in a safe place. I feel that what I call, I mean, there's psychological safety to know that you can speak up, but it's my nervous system that feels safer because they've been emotionally engaging. The environment, I can request a more sensory supportive environment, or say that, I can make my needs known and they'll be received with a willingness to come and meet me where I am. And so, super powerful program that I'm just delighted to be in touch with people that are creating compassion. They're people who care about people. And so it's been a great compliment for the work I do personally to be involved with the Sunflower program.
So, how are you involved with changes, physical changes
Mhm.
in airports or workplaces, like the professor from Université Laval?
Ernesto Morales from Laval. Yeah.
And he is working with the government to have changes. They did a study with a number of people with disabilities who,
Yeah.
some are in wheelchairs, some have different types of disabilities. And you gave me an example when we met for lunch of just returning from a trip, and the lighting in Terminal 3 was brutal and it gave you a headache. And then the lighting in the bathroom, you took a picture of it. So, what will you do with that information and what change will come of it, if any?
Great question. So I have not yet reached out to my counterpart there, and I'm very appreciative of Pearson Airport, Greater Toronto Airports Authority, being members in the Sunflower program. So let me start by saying I know I'm talking to people who understand there are needs. What I happen to do as a sensitive person is make observations. And especially when I'm noticing something that could be more calm, more pleasing, more engaging, more neurologically safe. What I'm doing now, and I haven't yet done this with Greater Toronto Airports Authority, but will be, is letting them know what I've noticed and inviting a conversation to understand a bit more about that. Because for a lot of people, there are a lot of people who are, let me put it this way. We've got about 20 to 30% of people that are sensitive. If I anger and sensitivity and not autism for a second, it's a great percentage of the population. I have noticed over several years of asking people, how do you feel about this light? How do you feel about that? What about that sound? What happened for you? What happens is I'll notice it and I'll have a severe negative impact, like the triggering of an all-night headache because of the lighting. What what will happen when I ask my neighbor, "Oh my gosh, yes, the lighting's awful in here. It's bothering me." Or a lot of times, "Oh my gosh, yeah, you know what? Now that you pointed out, that is awful. That does bother me." But there are a lot of people going through the world not really pinpointing what the effect is of their environment on them. I've just recorded and we're editing a podcast all around sound and conflict. And we're putting together what I hope is a really useful tool. And we're going to build a series of this. And it's a self-reflection worksheet on my relationship to sound is going to be the first one. And we're looking at prompting individuals to be able to articulate what's great sound for me and why, and what does it evoke in the body and in the mind. What's a difficult sound for me? What does it evoke in the body and the mind? And then the next question is, and this is where I'll be going in terms of advisory services and consultancy, is, now that we're noticing a bit more fully the effect that we're having, and we're grounding it in the science of disrupted circadian rhythm, of glare, of migraine, of this overall energy tax we're placing on humans, we'll be able to say, okay, what should I now then adopt as design guidelines? And, so that's the hope, is to work with organizations to understand the space culture experience, give them a set of design guidelines, which go a little further than some of what's out there. For example, the British Standards Institute has a guide to building design that is supposed to be more neurologically safe. That's my term, not theirs. And they have lighting recommendation in there that says 3000 Kelvin for lighting is the minimum lighting color temperature. Now, for those of you who are trying to picture, what's she talking about? 3000 Kelvin. 2700 Kelvin is about the typical incandescent 60-watt bulb that you had in your home. So that gave a warm glow. You didn't feel glare. You felt comfortable. That the Kelvin talks about the color temperature, or the warmth of the coolness of the color of the light. And so 2700 feels good generally. 3000, you'll see product label warm white. To me, it's not warm enough. We need to go to 2700 as one aspect of lighting. We also need to make sure that we're not having cheap LED lighting. The way they color the light to create the yellow is a coating of phosphorus. That phosphorus coating wears off over time. So the color changes. You might have seen some lights. Mine were just changed in the hallway actually last week. And they were turning a kind of green over time. So they were looking dingy and green. And I was so thrilled. I happened to meet Felipe in the hallway as he was changing our light bulbs. And I looked and I went, oh, which light bulbs are you putting in? Can you show me the product? Can you show me what you're putting in? He showed me a 60-watt LED. You don't often see watts like that with LED. It's usually measured differently. There was no color temperature on it, but on the picture of the box, there was actually options for different colors. Turns out that he could, on the light bulb itself, change from cool to warm. And he did. And I'm like, oh, yes, oh, yes, oh, yes. Thank you. He went through and changed all the bulbs. And now on the 49 stories in our building, 50 stories, they're all going to be changed to be or implemented with the right color temperature. And what's interesting is my hypothesis, and I was talking to an architect, Milton Schinberg, on the weekend, who's written a beautiful book on architecture and people-centered design. He's a sensitive man. I'm a sensitive woman. I said, my hypothesis is that the highly sensory sensitive people, autistic people, and many more are paying attention to stimulation of the nervous system that is actually toxic to the human body and detrimental to the human body, and invites us to just have a greater tax on our day and leave us with less energy. And he's like, yes, we're the canaries in the coal mine, is essentially it, which is the title of Ludmila Preslova's book, which is all about neurodiversity at work. So I think there is starting to be a recognition that some of what we notice should evolve towards being standards in design. What's happened is technology advances, and we haven't seen the guidelines catch up or any articulation that they need to be paid attention to. So my work on the Happy Space podcast and on the book I'm working on around this concept of neurological safety is to create some guidance around not just sensory support, but cognitive kindness around cognitive overload, with the kind of information we're asked to process now, which is, I don't know about you, but I hit a new level of overwhelm in October. And I was just like, wow, the landscape with now. So I run my own business and I also do the sunflower work. One is in Google land, the other is in Outlook land. And I had to figure out how to bring those two words together and not lose my marbles. The cognitive demand of our world is far more than we've evolved to manage. And in the effort of giving us more options, we're actually suffering from a kind of a toxically cognitive environment. And the last piece, and this is some overlap with psychological safety, but I'm talking about emotional engagement and the tone with which we deliver messages, how we communicate, how we invite people to come on a journey with us. Boy, do we have work to do. There's so much opportunity. I'm calling out challenges. Like I was just in the swimming pool change room on the weekend. Number one, I have to celebrate the fact that there is now a barrier that can be put across temporarily in a sign that says male in the change room, come back in 10 minutes. Because when I found out the hard way that they didn't have any process, it was because there were men in the change room when I was changing. I was like, what? Excuse me. And it's like 100-foot change room, and it wasn't possible to have two people at the door. So they finally designed a solution to communicate, to say, keep us sensory supportive, keep us feeling psychologically safe, our nervous system's safe, to make sure the environment was good, you know? So I think we have an opportunity for sensory support, cognitive kindness, and emotional engagement in our spaces, in our cultures, and in our experiences. And that's what this body of work is all about.
The floor timers listening will recognize a lot of common overlap. You
Mhm.
said emotional engagement, that's functional emotional developmental capacity. The second
Yeah.
one, capacity two, FEDC2 in the DIR model, engaging and relating. And it is about that emotional engagement and how we put that barrier up when we are
Mhm.
working with autistic children or interacting with autistic people in the real world. When
Mhm.
we put up these barriers that they cannot possibly engage with us when they're dysregulated by the
Yeah.
sensory environment. And the way you describe that as an energy tax, I love that term because it really is. It's, we've talked about spoon theory, we've talked about cognitive load, we've talked about those
Mhm.
kinds of things, but I love that term energy tax that um, it really, and I've never thought about that because I've thought about, I know that I can't go outside without sunglasses on and
Yeah.
especially cannot drive without sunglasses on, even when it's cloudy out.
Yeah.
It's too bright for me, but
Yeah.
I've never thought about that as taxing my energy. Never
Mhm.
ever thought about that. And I don't know if it does or if it doesn't. But you certainly are aware that things tax your energy. And that's very interesting to help people
Yeah.
with the podcast you're going to do to have that. How does it make you feel?
Yeah. There's an example I was just reading, and I'm reading a lot of architecture and design books right now. And there was a piece of art, and oh, it's going to bother me that I won't have the name for you, but it was an art installation where there was a white room and the corners were rounded. So you would go in and feel like you were in a whiteout. And then you were moved forward into a red room. And you could look at the red for a while, but you would feel fatigue from the red. When you turn back to look at the white room, it no longer looks white. Your eye makes up for the exhausted red cones and gives you green. And you see green room where there's a white room. So it's really interesting that this concept of even the hairs in our ears, the fact that there's all our processes. You ever gone to a long lecture and you come out and you haven't moved your body, but you're exhausted? Listening takes energy. And we minimize these energy expenses that we are asking of people. And so I suppose neurological safety is also energy management in another way, right? It's actually trying to reduce the load, the cognitive load, the emotional load, the sensory load, so that we can move forward without paying taxes that are not optional.
And, I see so much potential in the research areas, and I'm sure there is a lot of research already with fMRIs and everything being able
Mm.
to look at what's happening in the brain when you're overloaded with sensory stimulation. And again, I'm sure there probably
Mm.
is research out there, but
Mhm.
to get that more nuanced with autistic individuals and highly sensitive
Mhm.
people, whether they have diagnosis or not, and get all
Mhm.
of this information so that it's not just a tally of self-report, but it's also backed up with hard science and brain science and things like that
Mhm.
that almost make it
Yeah.
completely not an option for people to ignore.
Exactly. I keep coming up with questions that don't have answers yet, and hoping that research will it will keep growing in this field. I've been trying to do research on the startle response and can you mitigate it? Can you sensitize to certain things? Can you habituate, and there is some science that says autistic people cannot habituate as easily as others. So that heightened stimulation is it's harder to it's harder to manage. I've just come through a weekend here. You may have heard it, where we've had 4 days of air show, 1 day of training, 3 days of show. And then the motorcycles and trucks and jet skis that were all coming out are where I live, it's very beautiful, but the soundscape is hellish now. And all of those vehicles come out and they're revving and they're backfiring. And to top it off all last night, somebody came out and was blasting fireworks. I put on my Facebook, I was in my tub. Don't worry, the picture is not more than you want to see. It's my feet and my candle in my bathtub. But you can hear the fireworks coming through the ductwork from outside, from the exhaust from the bathroom, into the only room that you think would be insulated from outside because there's no window. Coming right in, I hear pop, 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 pop in the bathtub. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, we don't have a culture right now that believes in protecting the nervous system. And if I could make a plea or an invitation to anyone listening who thinks that this is important, it's at every level of government. We need to remind the politicians that there's a cost to this sensory assault. I call it audio assault. Um, I was just reading the book on architecture. Everything is waves. Everything is waves. And so these waves are affecting the ear, the hair in our ears. The waves are affecting the retinal cells in the eye. If we start to understand that biology is physics and then connect this to what we're doing in the built environment and our behaviors, we need to invite and guide a whole new level of respect for the human animal and the sensory experience. It's our visceral connection to the world, and it can be a wondrous, beautiful thing that has led to our being able to survive and develop. But it is also unfortunately designing a lot of us out because we're not caring for this environment.
And it's so easy for certain people in whatever position they're in to be dismissive. And I heard
Mhm.
you say on, I think it was your episode 2 podcast, that you had a leader when you talked about how you need natural light in your office, etc.,
Yeah.
saying
Mhm.
to you, "Oh, I could work anywhere. I could work in, under a
I
desk
could
in
work on
this."
the back of a pizza box. I remember the conversation. I was like, what? Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't apply to everybody. So how do we, and maybe this is a much larger and much more difficult question, how do we inspire others to have empathy for people who aren't like them?
So when I was working with people in their homes, and let's just say it's a husband and wife, and I'm in the closet. I remember this moment actually too, where oftentimes the women were expected to take care of the house, organize it, manage it. And they were expected to be able to intuit what that meant and be naturally gifted at organization. Well, we know that that ain't necessarily gender-based as a way of being. The propensity to like order versus and tolerate chaos are two different axes. I put together an organized personality matrix. And it looks at that, and people fall into all the different four quadrants. And if I was talking to this husband and wife in their closet, the husband is like left it to the wife to organize. The wife has folded the clothes, put them up, put sweaters up on that upper cabinet, right? Upper top shelf in the closet. Now, just imagine you're reaching for that upper shelf and you want the sweater on the bottom. Well, the husband goes to reach for that and she shouts out, "No, you can't wear that. I just folded it." And you're like, mm, okay, I sense some problems with this. Number one, he should be able to wear what he wants to wear. But number two, we need structures that help us organize better. So, sidebar, I developed a product that helps you actually do that. Plio, Plio, for anyone's curious.
You emailed me, Pleo. I didn't realize you created that.
Yeah, I hold the patent on that product. Yeah.
That I had no idea that you meant, I just thought you meant you saw it and you thought it was cool. I didn't realize
Yeah.
you, okay, this is amazing. We'll
Yeah.
put
So,
links to all this stuff in the show notes.
oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, I bring it up because in this conversation with this husband and wife, to get back to this idea of understanding and building a bridge between people who have two different realities, the husband wasn't understanding the wife's need for calming the visual environment, right? Too much noise, too much tax being paid, parsing that chaotic environment. And so I came up with an analogy. You could use food or you could use music. These are the two that I found most successful. When it comes to music, most people have a genre that they love and they'll have a genre that they're not fans of. So, Daria, give me an example. What music do you love? What music do you like? Do you have?
I mean, I love a lot of industrial music. I absolutely hate country music.
Okay, so let's go with that, right? So let's say the husband says, "I love industrial and country. No, thank you, Garth Brooks, whatever. I'm not interested." Imagine, I said to the husband, I said, imagine your wife is playing country music, full volume all the time. And that's what happens when you look in this closet. That's her country music. All of a sudden, he got it. He got it and went, "Oh, wow, that's something I never was being able to bridge." And so that metaphor, pizza. What do you like on your pizza? What do you hate on your pizza? Now imagine for dinner, you only get the pizza with all the stuff you don't like on it. Ah, pizza's ruined forever. So connecting viscerally to one's own experience, positive and negative, to understand the valence of it, the degree, I think is really important. What I have not cracked is the people with modified exhausts and how to connect them to caring about making sound that is an assault on somebody else. And so I've been looking for the stats on the percentage of people who are psychopathic and who are narcissists, who are people that are sadistics, let's say. There's a study out of London, Ontario that researched, it's only one study, so it needs to be replicated, but it was a study of people with these modified exhaust loud engines. And her hypothesis was they were going to be narcissistic temperaments, like, "Oh, I just want to do what I want to do." But it was worse. It was that they were sadistic. They wanted to inflict harm on others. So, what I know about sound and light is those waves travel. Those waves are not relegated to just the car experience. Those revs of the engine, those backfires, and one person can disrupt hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions of people, with their behavior. And so, does that not deserve to be held in check? Where did we get to a culture? How did we get to a culture that gives one person that kind of weapon and used without any kind of consequence? Because it's difficult. It's difficult to rein in. It's difficult to chase a motorcycle. Our police won't do it because of the catastrophic consequence that could happen if you're chasing a motorcycle. So this is a nut to crack. I have a feeling there might be humor. I talked about it in the upcoming episode of my podcast about sound and conflict. And a beautiful example was brought up about a mayor in a city who used mimes to actually catch people in the act of disregard. whether it's social disregard was dropping garbage or whether it was not crossing properly at the street corner, and the mime would mimic them. So there was humor to point out because ain't nobody likes to be called out, especially when they know they're doing something wrong. That gets the most viscerally inflamed reaction of all when somebody knows they're behaving badly and you point it out. Risky territory. And ask me how I know. So, so that analogy, I think, might offer up some possibility when it's not when you're not dealing with someone that's intending to inflict harm and feeling radically self-entitled, which is post-COVID, a way a lot of people feel, especially in Toronto, where we were very heavily controlled. We were very heavily restricted. And I think there's a backlash to that now, which we're all suffering from a little bit.
Yeah, it's a very interesting how there are, I mean, again, I'll bring this back to the I in DIR, the unique profiles. I'll just
Mhm.
start off by saying that I know a few friends of mine who are male who are so tidy. Like, I walk into their place and I'm like, and I
Mhm.
remember one of them who I'm still friends with, we were not really roommates, but my friend and I had the first floor, and his friend and him had upstairs. And when I was a student at Western in London and London, Ontario, for international
Yes.
listeners.
Yes, yeah.
um, and I remember we would all go to the laundromat and do laundry, and I would watch him fold every pair of underwear, and
Oh,
I'd watch
yes.
him
Let me
put it
show
in
you
the
how it's done.
drawer,
Uh-huh.
place them all beside each other neatly, and then every pair of socks. And I was like, even I don't do that, and I consider myself like organization person, although I'm totally disorganized most of the time. But I like things very tidy. Now, I also had a couple of friends who are female that I grew up with, the biggest quote unquote slobs you'd ever seen. Like, if you walked into their bedroom, like, oh, where's the floor? Like, just
Yeah.
clothes, papers, everywhere, like brutal. And I'm still friends with one of them, and she told me that her husband always, nags her about the state of the house.
Well, and a lot of times, especially when I worked with new moms, moms are now in that environment and the dad was going to work
Yeah.
and they had an escape from the environment, whereas the woman was in it all the time. So different nesting, nurturing, and all of that. Yeah, yeah,
Well, that brings me into the next point I was going to make, which is when you talk about these people were sadistic, it makes me think about, again, let's circle back and end it with the theme we started with, the environment's impact on somebody. So,
yes.
are they truly a sadistic person, or is it something in the environment that caused them? And in the same way that a mother, and I know this happened to me, slammed me in the face. I've loved kids my whole life, babysat every neighborhood kid. Everybody said, "Oh, you're going to have 10 kids." And it wasn't until my child was 1 month old that I started to notice, like, whoa, excessive crying, and not being able to lay down without being held, and just all of
Right,
the sensory issues. And it just
right.
blindsided me. And so, what I usually would be able to be in control of in my household, I no longer had
Oh,
the
bye-bye.
to do because I was so eager to do everything as a mother that I could to make sure this little gorgeous being was taken care of. So that environment, and like you said, it's going to impact, it's going to be an energy tax on what we can usually do. And as you said,
Mhm.
after COVID, we've seen a lot of self-entitled behavior. And
Mhm.
maybe that is some kind of defense to whatever's going on in that person's world. I mean, I don't want to justify.
Yeah, I've started to reframe it. This is the only thing I can do by the time I've come through the air show, come through the modified exhaust, and then come to fireworks, is try and imagine the joy that somebody else is experiencing. Because witnessing, when you look at other people having fun, generally we smile, we laugh. It's a little contagious. So that's the only thing I've come up with as a remedy, is to just say, well, at least they're having fun and just try to. But I'll tell you, I went to look at a property a couple of weeks ago, thinking where could the next place be outside of Toronto? This beautiful place on Georgian Bay. And it's idyllic, except for the fact it was north facing, and I can't do north facing because as I learned through a study where people were recovering from depression 45 days faster if you were in the south exposure versus the southwest exposure versus northeast, something like that. So I'm like, oh no, 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 no. My son is critical to me. That unit was beside a gun club. And I was like, what's this pop, pop, pop that I'm hearing outside?
Good
I'm
thing
like,
you noticed that when you were looking. My goodness. I
right?
am checking my Google
Yes.
map to see whether I'm north or south facing. Honestly, I never thought about it. I have no clue.
You've never thought about it? Does sun
Uh,
come in your window?
The sunset.
Then you're west facing, your window's west facing. I
North
will
is
move
that.
around, move about my house depending where the sun is. In the afternoon, I will go sleep in the bedroom, on the bed in the winter because the sun comes in the window. If it's the summer, I'm on the floor on my patio cushions in the sun. Like I am like you can see cats and dogs go sit in the sun and nap,
Yeah.
right? I'm just a big version of that.
Oh, I love having my feet in the sun if I am in my kitchen and the sun's coming in because I get the morning sun in the kitchen,
Beautiful. So that's east.
which is perfect that my son is west facing because if that sun comes in his window in the morning, he's up even earlier than he already naturally wakes up.
Interesting. But this is what I was talking about, that self-reflection worksheet. We're going to do one on a number of different elements so people can dance and wait a minute, I haven't really thought about my relationship to sound. Blah. What do I want to know so I can use that as design criteria? How do I want to now? Oh, does that mean I want to actually put soft furnishings in my bedroom? Do I want to put the blackout blinds in? So I think the first place is awareness. And then you can move into the understanding and action, right? But awareness is the place to start around what those individual needs you were talking about. What really does the individual respond to, and what drives their relaxation, therefore their best performance. I mean, there are times, I will say, there are times when we want our adrenaline going and we use that as a fuel, but it's not the normal. This is a small percentage. It's not our shouldn't be our normal prompt, our normal way of being.
And I think that's what leads a lot of people to autistic burnout is going on overdrive for just far too long.
Well, that's it. I didn't have the words in 2007 when I was talking to the woman who wanted me to work anywhere on the back of a pizza box or whatever. I mean, I immediately asked to sit in the light there. Because I knew it was starting work in October, November, and I'm like, we're going into the dark half. I call it the dark half, right? I have noticed that when we get 11 hours of daylight, whew, my battery clicks into over here or into gear. So the beginning of November, around the time change here, I'm like, oh, this is pajamas at 6:30 time of year. Like I now do not accept evening engagements unless I'm incredibly well paid and nap before. I move more with the seasons and what it's asking of me. I don't fight winter. I don't agree to do things and struggle with it the way I used to. I'm going to rest and recover more in the hibernation phase. And in summer, I'm stupid busy. Yesterday, I accepted 3 hours of tennis. So, like, I mean, I will overdo it in the summer when I'm fueled. My mitochondria are saying yes to all that sunshine energy. My battery's on full force. And in the winter, you'll find me reacting accordingly. And I think the more we can tune in and notice what our environments are supporting us to do and inviting us to do and stop countering it to the degree we try to and override, that override is what leads to the burnout.
I am laughing because my partner is the opposite. He loves the winter and
Right.
loves it being dark and never opens the blinds ever
Mhm. Mhm.
and just thrives in that and gets excited that the evening's going to be longer.
Right. Right. Which is kind of cool. And if we can bring ourselves to match what we're expecting ourselves to do with the container, what a much better life, right? So now that I don't wrestle with winter, I don't have to put on boots and manage all the cumbersome um exterior of carrying all the things to go to work and the commute and all that. I was absolutely exhausted. But now that I design life to choose very selectively when I'm going out versus when I'm managing in a more controlled space, I have much more energy and much more joy in navigating life.
And with that privilege, getting
Yes.
other
Yes.
organizations to do that so that people that don't have that choice don't have to fight through that like you did in the early days of your career, like I did as well.
Yeah.
It's so important, and you're making me want to, well, I am going to bring this to our DIR group at my employer because we do the sensory processing profile as an
Hmm.
early exercise when people learn about the DIR model. And it's different to check off a box of, what you're sensitive to or whatever than what you described, which is how do you experience it? What does
Hmm.
it do to you? And all of these things. So I am going to be eagerly awaiting these podcasts that you're doing, and maybe have some interesting conversations with some of the floor timers about this sensory processing profile, taking a different look at it.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I love the work that you're doing, and I think it's just going a little deeper in it. It's looking a little more closely, and then really as that human animal, and knowing that mind body is connected. How do we really get in touch with that? So we really are supporting ourselves.
And I think that a lot of these different types of questionnaires were made by neurotypical people to attempt to understand what the neurodivergent experience was. But when we have
Mm.
neurodivergent people creating the type of questionnaires that we understand, because
Hmm.
I hate questionnaires with a passion. Every single thing I'll put a star next to it. It depends. What's the context?
Right.
Blah blah blah.
Right. Oh,
Like
I
I'm the
feel you.
nightmare test taker
Hmm.
for things like that. So
Yeah.
I can't wait for that. Thank you so much, Claire. It's just such incredible work you're doing and just amazing information. I will put links to Claire's website, Claire's services, Claire's products, Claire's podcast on the show notes. And do check it out. Listen to the Happy Space podcast. I am still plugging through. It's on my list. You're an avid reader. I'm an avid podcast listener.
Mm.
So it is on my list, on my playlist.
I love it. Thank you so much for listening. As you know, it's wonderful to hear from people that listen, that something resonated. So I'm hoping your listeners got a lot from this, our conversation. I get something every time I talk to you. So thank you very much for having me.
Well, I'll look forward to our next get together, and maybe we'll go walking along the lake when there are not fireworks and no airplanes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Claire.
Thank you.
Until next time, here's to choosing play and experiencing joy every day. Thank you for listening. This episode of We Chose Play was made possible with the generous financial support of Affect Autism's members and of the International Council on Development and Learning, ICDL.com. If you liked this episode, please share it with someone, like and subscribe, sign up for the newsletter at affectautism.com, and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, or Instagram. Find out more at affectautism.com.